Thanks for
She
joining us.
Helena is like the biggest movie fan of all time. She can tell you everything about everything niche and everything video and just everything. So I'm so excited to talk to you today. But hello everyone, I'm James and this is Helena and we have a huge guest. I'm fanboying. Um the star and creative force of one of my favorite films, Black Roses, Sal Viviano. And I'm so excited to talk to you about this movie because this movie means so much to me and it means so much to so many cult fans. But before I ramble on, we here at Cult Musicals, we like to give life and to explore underrated, underrepresented, obscure, and forgotten cult movie musicals. And Helena is a frequent guest, and we go to bat for these movies, and we talk about their legacy, the music, we talk about the cast, etc. But we're just really passionate about you won't ever hear us talk about Grease or The Sound of Music. I'll just say that we're always talking about these underrepresented and just beloved and obscure cult musicals. So before I
James,
get into
James, the underrepresented musicals are pretty much my entire career.
perfect.
It's a wonderful thing. That is
All the,
there's
all
nothing
the
wrong with that.
overlooked and yeah, the buried stuff and the overlooked. Yeah, that's pretty much my entire career.
But
No, that's awesome.
to give you some hope and to give you some, like, I guess, to big you up a little bit, those underrepresented and forgotten musicals are the ones that have the most devoted fan followings.
You know what? I think you're right. I think you're right. It's a long time ago we made Black Roses, um, and I'm proud of it. I always have been proud of it, but I am always still to this day, I don't know, whatever it is, 30 some years ago, still shocked when I come out of a stage door or when I come out after doing a concert with a symphony orchestra and there's somebody usually dressed in all black and usually a teenager and, looking, kind of standing behind their parents and they kind of look around and they go, "You Damien, man?" And I'm
Oh, that's
like,
rad.
"I'm Damien." And they're like,
Well, you look the same, so
Yeah,
I'll
you
say
look
that
exactly the same. Oh, do you
"I
check to see if
do."
they're a demon? I mean, do you have to check and see if they're a demon or anything?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I frisk them. No,
Get your gasoline out. You're like, yeah,
absolutely. I check if they know the handshake,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. See if they have googly eyes and no.
you totally.
Uh, but honestly, and it's usually they've been dragged to my concert, with their parents, and then during at some point during the because I don't, it's not even necessarily always in my bio. Depending if I'm doing a symphony concert or whatever I'm doing, but not that I'm not proud of it, but sometimes that gets cut out, your movies
right.
Sure.
of your bio. So it's usually a kid who somewhere during the concert goes like, "Oh my God, that's like the Damien guy." So
Well, your voice is very unique, and we'll get into that. Before we get into the music and the plot and the history, Helena, what's your relationship with Black Roses?
Well, I mean, I remember it from kind of the golden era of the 80s and 90s, like on USA Networks. I know they used to play it. They would also play, oh, the one with John Michael Thor that I think preceded it.
yeah, Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
John
So
Michael was
what?
supposed to play Damien, in fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the same director. It's John
Oh,
Fasano.
yep. Hmm.
Yep.
John had made Rock and Roll Nightmare first for a smaller budget, and then they wrote Black Roses, and he was going to use John Michael Thor, and then anyway, at some point, I went and auditioned, and John and his wife Cindy offered me the part, and I had no idea about Thor, till well after we filmed because I hadn't even seen any of John's movies or anything, and anyway, so I'm glad John asked me to do it. He was a great guy. What a great guy. Such a brilliant mind and a great storyteller. He storyboarded every frame of the movie.
Hmm.
He was a terrific artist, and he
Yeah.
literally drew out the entire. I made a couple movies with him, and he would storyboard the entire movie. And honestly, it looked like the final product. He was a brilliant artist, but also a real creative soul and just a bigger than life personality, and always the smartest guy in the room, and the most engaging. He just wanted everybody to shine.
Totally.
And John Fasano did, it's like the holy trinity of metal horror musicals: Zombie Nightmare, Rock and Roll Nightmare, and Black Roses within a year. Within a
Right.
year.
Yeah, that's true. And then I made another movie with him that was not a musical. Well, I didn't sing in it, but it had music in it. But actually, the music was probably the weakest part of the movie, called The Jitters, which was a kind of a horror movie in its own right. I played the hero. I was not the monster in that.
Yeah, I wrote that down today. I got to go to the video store and get it later to watch it.
Oh, it's actually a really good movie, and the amazing thing about it, there's a lot of wonderful people in it, but in fact, some people that are also in Black Roses. Frank Deeds, my buddy Frank Deeds, who plays Johnny in Black Roses, plays one of the thugs in the Jitters. But very notable about the Jitters is James Hong, the great character actor James Hong. And if you don't know by name, you know who James Hong is.
I totally know.
Yeah, like 700 movies. He just got a star on the Walk of Fame last year at age, like, I think James is like 95 or 96.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
James Hong had a crush on one of my coworkers. If you believe that.
Well, I believe that James Hong he's a dog, man. He would hit anything. Not to say ill of your coworker, but he's he's a flirt. He's a big
flirt. Yeah, he definitely was a flirt.
Yeah. He's a charming, funny, wonderful guy. But like Black Roses, John got James Hong to be in that. But he had wonderful actors, established actors in Black Roses too. Julie Adams and Ken Swafford and John Martin and Carl Ferrigno. So some wonderful people. Anyway,
I like to think that I always try to make a connection. I would like to think that Black Roses, Rock and Roll Nightmare, Zombie Nightmare, and even Shock Me Dead with Tracy Lords exist somehow within the same universe. I think they exist in my personal opinion, my cult mind, I think they all exist within the same universe. I mean, Badass,
and Trick or Treat.
Yes, and Trick or Treat, and Rocktober Blood, and Terror on Tour. I mean, there's something really cathartic to me about those movies. I find those movies very cathartic. I find them very somber. I don't know if that makes sense, but like when I first saw Black Roses and
yeah, I get what you mean.
And Edge of Hell, aka Rock and Roll Nightmare, it was 2015, 2016. But I feel like there's something very very midnight, midnight movie VHS up all night sort of feel to it. And I revisit Black Roses at least twice a year. I watched it.
I know. It was on Up All Night on USA. I mean, USA Network played the hell out of this thing. And that's how I first saw it as a kid, was on USA Network. And then, of course, we had that magnificent VHS box with the ray printing, and I think it had like glowing eyes as well. It's really cool.
That was probably really like groundbreaking, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was that, and the one for God, why can't I think today? The Wanna Date one, the Frankenhooker. Like those were the two most epic boxes of all time in the 80s. And I was going to say, for James, to the point, being in that time, this was still when rock and roll was bad. Like it was a little satanic, and you play the records backwards and you get the blah 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 blah. So that's what this movie was, and that made it seem at the time a lot more serious than it. We look at this now, and we're like, oh, it's metal and big hair and ha ha ha. But back then, that was like the epitome of evil. That was like Marilyn Manson level of evil.
Satanic Panic, yeah,
right.
Total Satanic.
And this was the time of Tipper Gore. He was literally talking Satanic Panic about that rock and roll was trying to destroy kids, and so that was the whole point of hiring Julie Adams to play like the moral majority in the town. And I thought Julie was just amazing, and with her history with the creature from the Black Lagoon, it was great to have her there. And then you have Big Pussy, Vinnie Pastore, in his first movie. That's his very first movie, getting eaten by the speaker.
Amazing. And he did great with it. I could feel the fear.
Yeah, he was wonderful. Yeah, Vinnie was wonderful about that all the time. He's always like, "You were the star of my first movie, pal." I said, "Yeah." And my career has gone zoom.
But But besides this movie being really cathartic and me loving it so much, I love this movie so much. Um, you heard about our history with it, but how did you get involved with it? How did you get involved with the production of this gem?
Well, so I was primarily a stage actor. I mean, I'd done a lot of commercials and sang a lot of jingles. I started my career in Chicago after college, and then I got my first Broadway show and moved to New York in '84, a musical called The Three Musketeers. And anyway, that was a big flop, but I, continued to work in New York and stayed in New York, lived in New York, and worked steadily in the theater and did, some commercials, but and some TV. I did a couple soaps. And then my agent called me about this movie, and I actually went to John and Cindy's house in Bronxville. They lived in Bronxville at the time to do my screen test, and in their basement. And
Nice.
in fact, I think that's part of that is on when it came out in DVD, long after the movie was first released. And John actually did a commentary along with the movie. At the end of that DVD, I think are some auditions, including my audition, is on there. Like I'm in it like a baby blue. I mean, I look ridiculous. I don't anything like yeah, I don't look anything like I wouldn't have hired me as Damien. But then they came to see me in a Broadway show too. Yeah, there's the DVD.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look right now.
yeah, yeah. Uh, so, but they came to see me in a Broadway show. Well, actually, I was doing an off-Broadway show called Romance, Romance, a musical that was going to then move to Broadway. And so they cast me in the movie. I went to Canada to shoot the movie. In the meantime, um, there was a musical called Chess that opened on Broadway. It was,
One
it
night in
was
Bangkok.
that's
Yes,
right,
yes.
big hit in London, and then
Yep.
it came to New York with an American cast. And so when I did the show Romance, Romance off Broadway, which I had raised all the money with the authors, it's a 4 character show, but it's really an actor and actress. It's based on 2 very old plays, and really a beautiful evening in the theater. And uh, they cast 2 leading men.
Oh, he might have froze.
I think you froze, but
I and an actor named Dennis Parlato, when we alternated, am I still frozen?
no.
I think
Am I
you're okay
better?
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so we did that off Broadway. We alternated the part. Well, Dennis took a part he was cast in Chess. So he opted not to do Romance, Romance on Broadway. And I'm out of town. And so the producers decided to hire Scott Bakula. You've heard of him.
Nice. Yeah.
So he played the lead, and then I stood by for him when I came back. So Scott opened the show, and then when he left, I went back to a series that he was doing at the time, Quantum Leap. Then I succeeded him in the show on Broadway. Anyway, but John and Cindy came to see me in that show off Broadway, and based on that, they cast me, and I mean, it was nothing like Damien. And what I loved about the script that they wrote was that Damien was not just the devil come to earth and
Mhm.
just as a heavy star, but that he then
Mhm.
could shapeshift and be whoever he was and take all these different forms during the movie, but also then be just kind of a guy like an actor when he's
Businessman.
talking to
Yeah.
right when he's talking to when they're doing the load in kind of rehearsal in the afternoon and the teacher comes Morehouse comes to the theater in the afternoon and Damien doesn't have the wig on, he's just in like he's drinking a glass of milk, he's it's bizarre, but I
Awesome.
loved that and I John was going to cut that initially and I said no, that's there's our dog. um I said make sure no that's like he said that's kind of superfluous. I said no, that's essential because you give a whole other element to this devil character that he's just he can farm anybody back to his table, and including Morehouse, and and he has known Morehouse's soul. I mean, I don't want to get too heavy about it,
I thought
but
that was a very good decision, though, because every time I watch the film, you almost wonder if you, as an audience member, are imagining all the conspiracy theories. Because you see this normal bloke dressed, totally in acid wash jeans, like a normal person, like sort of like a Miami Vice versus Def Leppard. And you
right.
wonder, I think it was actually a really brilliant choice to put him, to show Damien out of his rock garb, because you sort of wonder, are these people just batshit crazy? But then you find out. I mean, I thought that was a really, and I have some theories, and I guess I want to ask you your theories about it. But I think before we get into that, I actually never knew this movie was filmed in Canada because it looks like small town USA. Looks like where I'm from in Georgia.
Yeah, that's what they hope to achieve, and calling it Mill Basin and everything. Yeah, it's supposed to be, supposed to look like an American small town, somewhere
Three
outside of
Nights
New
in
York.
Mill Basin. Highly
That's
sus. Highly sus for a
highly.
film that size. They just played New York. I'm like,
Yeah. Well, and that opening scene, that opening concert scene where we're, I'm already like a monster, and they drag the people out, and the people come out screaming before the Lamborghini, before I drive in the Lamborghini. We
mhm.
actually filmed that after the fact. They had the studio decided to add that, so we filmed that like maybe 6 months, 4 or 6 months later, at a theater on Long Island.
Just not
Um,
enough monsters. You just need a
not
little
enough.
bit more monsters. Yeah. I did
Yeah,
the commentary track this morning. So I was like hearing all these things. It was really,
right.
really cool.
Right. Yeah, and they also wanted to establish that there was a history, even though they kind of established that this band has never played out of the studio before. They've just been a recording band, and but anyway, so that I thought that was a good choice too, and also the comic element. John had a great sense of humor, and a lot of that is tongue in cheek and on purpose. I don't think it's laugh out loud funny, especially not for a teenage audience,
Mhm.
but like my sons didn't see the movie probably until a couple of years ago when they were in their 20s. It was just I don't know, it just never showed it to them. And then when they still, they still kind of think it's like that. What is that? But
Mhm.
Good. It's so good. I do
It's
yeah.
I do have a question about the plot, because there is a common thread that sort of I guess you could call them the trinity of those horror metal films, of some sort of supernatural force that pervades rock music, or some musician fighting this darkness. Um, I like the way that audiences perceive that the Black Roses, they come from a very mysterious past, and there's always possibly the possibility that they've done this before, or they continue to do this at every American small town, and then eventually the world. I like
Mhm.
how it's set scene that this could have been episode 600 in a long running series. I mean, I think it's really interesting that the way that the plot jumps in, this band. I mean, to me, it almost sets up a sequel, which is something I always wanted to know, if that was something that was a possibility, that they would continue the story of the Black Roses. I don't know.
I
That
think
was, yeah.
I think we would have made a sequel had John lived longer. He talked about it. It's and there's been other talk about other people that were involved in the film that have wanted to make a sequel. We sort of had a reunion last year, not even a year ago, where we all got on Zoom, and it was a chat show not unlike this, and that was kind of fun to see everybody, and just the idea that there'd be another generation of it, because it was a cult hit at the time. So there was a heavy, there were so many heavy metal magazines, and so there was a whole contest where there was in was it in Tiger Beat or Teen Beat or one of those, it was win a date with Damien. And so
Oh my God.
people had to write in an essay, and
Mhm.
it was boys and girls, and they did a big, this big thing, and then chose this young girl, and we had a date in California, and saw a screening of the movie, and I'm sure she was very disappointed, but
You have the
it was
wig on. I mean, did you have the big hair? I mean, you came out in the leopard,
no
stuff.
wig, no kind of piece. No, I left all that at home.
Oh, yeah, there.
Um, Yeah. No, and I don't have the suit. They used to sew me in the suit every day.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
In
young
the
girl's
Lamb,
hopes just dashed right there.
yeah, it really was. No, I just showed up looking like me. I mean, my hair was probably longer than it is now, but
Mhm.
um, anyway, I just look like a
That's an
normal guy.
incredible marketing technique, though, is it not?
Well, they did that for a lot of things, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly. It was always like win a date with somebody.
right, right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was a
it
little younger
was.
for that, but yeah.
Win a date,
Yeah,
win
yeah,
a
we
date
did.
with Rick James.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, there you
But
go.
what makes this movie, I mean, this movie is beloved by two different fractions. Of course, you have the horror community on social media that loves this movie and sees it as a B horror film, and they love it and they embrace it and they're very devoted to it. And then you've got the smaller sort of niche fan base, which are cult musical fans who are fans of every musical that is underrated and bizarre, macabre, etc. So you have two different followings. You do, of course, and this film has two different followings of people who love it because it's a cheesy B horror film, and us people like Colleen and I who love it because of the music. And
I'm in the
this,
Venn diagram in the middle. I
Yeah,
intersect. Yeah.
yeah.
you,
I kind of do. I
uh,
kind of do.
Yeah.
but the movies that we love and embrace, we wouldn't love and embrace them if the music and the film weren't as
So
wonderful.
good. It's so good.
So
Yeah, it is
good.
good.
It's
It is good
amazing.
music.
And doing
The
research,
album
it's
was on the heavy metal charts for about 40 weeks. It did very well. The album did very well. I still have like they sent me an entire case of the albums.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, and someone just wrote me. Well, Frank, who was in the movie, he wrote me, sent me like maybe a month ago, just this thing where the album, the actual LP, was selling for like $600 or $700, and I thought
Oh my
I still
gosh.
have a few of them left. Because what I used to do is I used to keep them in my dressing room, like if I was in a Broadway show. Because like I said, people would come to the stage door, and usually kids dressed in black, and they'd say, "Are you Damien?" And I'd say,
Right.
"I am." And then I'd get their name, after I talked to them for a while, and I said, "Come tomorrow, and I'll leave you something at the stage door." And I would autograph an album for them and give them away, because how many albums can you have?
Sure.
And
I was going to be like,
so,
shut up and take my money and be like, yeah, if you have any
yeah,
left.
well, I
Yeah.
gave a lot of those. I gave an entire
Oh,
case of those. I think I have like three left.
oh my
Yeah.
and
God.
who could ever predict that vinyl outsells MP3s now? Who could have ever predicted that 10 years ago that
Oh,
vinyl sells more than any music medium? So it's like,
yeah, we thought it was going the way of 8-track, right? We're
but
too
the
young to even know what 8-track is, but 8-track was, huge format back
I
when I
had
was
a
a
car with
teenager.
one. I had a car with
Yeah,
one. I used to
yeah,
drive around and listen to Xanadu on it as rev.
oh,
right. And the track would change in the middle of a song. It would just go, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
but
a
the
The
physical
big,
media that can just go away. We're done with that one. We don't need to bring that one. All other Betamax tapes, I'm keeping it, but that one can
yeah,
go away.
I'm
yeah,
sure you
yeah.
have more information than we do about the music of this movie was composed by rock geniuses, rock masterminds. It wasn't as if they had some studio musicians or some studio composers composing music for this movie. I mean, you had, for all intents and purposes, you had members from Quiet Riot and King Cobra, which I didn't know who King Cobra was, but I know they were an
Yeah,
offshoot, I think, of Black Sabbath. But I mean, do
right.
you have a notion of how I know because I know John Thor wrote the music for Rock and Roll Nightmare. So I thought
Mhm.
it was really interesting, which I love Rock and Roll Nightmare. Energy. uh, but for this movie, do you know have any background information of how they chose or constructed this music?
Well, so Jim Glickenhaus, who was producing the movie, he put together, or got a hold of King Cobra, and then those guys that were an offshoot, they had all like subbed into Black Sabbath, and uh, there's a drummer named Carmine Appice who's actually in the movie, but he's also on the soundtrack. He was the drummer on the soundtrack, and Carmine had been in Vanilla Fudge, and he also was in Led Zeppelin. He was their replacement drummer in Led Zeppelin, and I just saw Carmine about a year ago. He lives not far from me here in New York City, and so we just I was literally walking behind a guy coming out of my chiropractor's office, not kidding. And I'm like, God, that looks like Carmine. And I'm like, Carmine. And this guy turns around, he goes, oh my God, Sal. I mean, I hadn't seen him in like 25 years. So that was pretty cool. But he's still playing, and he has a brother, Vinny, a piece,
Mhm.
who's also a famous rock drummer. But Carmine really was on all those tracks. He played drums on all those tracks. And there was a guy named Mark Free who does the lead vocals. He's now Marcy Free. He
Okay.
has transgender, and what a voice that guy had. I mean, it was an amazing voice, and just that high rock tenor. And I did actually record a few of the songs in the studio because at first when they hired me, they thought, he can do his own singing. I'd been happy
Sure,
to.
yeah.
I had done, Hair and Jesus Christ Superstar. I could sing that stuff. Not probably as well as Mark could, because he was also involved in writing it. And he just has that particular sound. So really, I do very little singing in the movie. And the stuff that I recorded, they had Mark re-record. So uh, it's not me at all. And so I don't know why they sent me that case of albums, and I'm really not even on it. I'm on it a little bit.
I'm
You
I've
know,
done a lot of other albums. I've done about 80 other albums since then, but not that kind of music.
no more metal. No more metal. Just yeah.
Metal, that's just not my fan base. Or
Yeah.
maybe I'm missing my
I
fan
mean,
base.
Christopher Lee went metal at the end of his life. I mean, heck, I mean,
Not because I
Tattooing
don't
went
like.
metal.
Yeah, no, I love metal, and I'm a big fan. I'm like you. I'm a big fan of this score, James. I mean, I think the music is great, and
Absolutely.
I think those songs are really powerful and wonderfully performed, and they just elevate the movie in a great way. And in fact, I want more of them. I want the longer versions of the songs, much of which you can find online, and people have, for years and years put the full versions and then done clips from the movies. You can find hundreds of those, but people send them to me all the time. But
What did you
uh,
think when you heard the soundtrack? Because this is the height of Def Leppard. This is the height of Kiss. What did you think when you heard the music? I mean, it's brilliant.
it is, and since and I probably heard it before anybody, because I heard Mark's original vocals before everything was even mixed, because I had to learn them, because I had to lip sync to them.
Mhm.
Because we didn't know how many of the songs we were actually going to film in the concert scene, so I had to I learned the entire album. And I had done that before. I'd done a fair amount of recording by that point, but I'd never really lip synced on film. I'm trying to think if I have since. No, I mean, other than to myself, I've recorded things for films that I've sung in films and then had to, lip sync to myself. But no, I thought it was inspiring, and I mean, I was thrilled when I heard the songs. I thought these are fantastic songs. I was not surprised one iota that album did so well on the metal charts, because it's great stuff. It's
You
great
have
stuff.
Dance on Fire, Soldiers of the Night, and the beautiful, beautiful song Paradise, We're on Our Way. That is a
Yeah, we're
gorgeous.
yeah, it is.
Well, Paradise on our way, wasn't that the one that was like, oh, we're gonna do the nice song while all the adults are
Oh,
watching? No.
well, it is. It is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My
Yeah, it's
home.
like that's
Is
the
it
like,
playing?
oh,
You're
love
right.
ballad, we're so
Yeah,
nice,
on
yeah.
our way to paradise, and the parents all
Hmm.
like, nah, I guess this is all we
Yeah,
need
it's
to see.
okay, it's fine.
They
And then
give
you're
them
like,
2 minutes.
yep,
Yeah,
In
a
another
little eyebrow
world,
raise, and a
yep,
little eyebrow raise, and we're off to the races.
little
yeah.
bait and switch there. Yeah.
Do it anymore.
In another time, in another place, in another, I guess, dimension, I could have easily seen that released as a single from a band,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
Black Roses. And that's a really interesting thing. Is there any reason John chose the term Black Roses, the title? Was there any reasoning behind that?
I don't know. I think other than just the symbol of the black rose it's a devil symbol, in that it doesn't occur in nature. But I guess now, someone else told me years ago that black roses can be grown now, that they're grown in some part of the world. But
Mhm.
at the time, I think it was just a choice of a symbol that was that it had a delicacy to it, but it definitely had the connotation of the devil.
Sure.
I've always been interested in movies that have like rock concert scenes, and I'm always interested in extras. I mean, they probably felt like they were really at a concert when you have
Yeah,
this. They probably forget that there's, miming and lip syncing, etc. I don't know. I would have loved to have been in that audience to be there and experience that concert scene. I mean, all the concert scenes, even the really bizarre concert scene when you are already transformed into the demon,
right,
which begs the question, do the youth really know what's going on?
right. I guess by that point they are so under Damien's spell that they're brainwashed, and they've until he starts getting burned, which is kind of a little funny that the
Yeah.
monster that I turn into, which was a beautiful monster, but it
Yeah.
was made for a guy who was like 5'2", and I'm like 6'2".
I've
So
heard.
I couldn't.
So it's kind of like the arms are up here. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really long arms, right? But the guy who actually wore the suit, that's not me because I couldn't fit in the
Yeah.
suit. It was like a foot too short.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
a guy named Dan Platt, who was actually a makeup artist, one of the makeup artists who worked on the monster stuff, and he was a great guy. But he actually is in that suit, and thank God I didn't have to go in that suit because I mean it was full on rubber, and the
Yeah.
guy was like saturated when he came out of that every time because it was just like thick. It was
Mhm.
like wearing
Under the
a tire.
lights. Yeah. You don't want to do that. Well, I was going to say for
No,
James, I mean, when they were shooting these concert scenes, they don't just shoot the whole thing. So it's not like you're at a concert. It's like you have to do takes. You take this little part of it and then you take this little part of it. So it wasn't like a contiguous, musical number that these people got to sit through. It would be like lip syncing parts of it with probably a playback in the background. So it
definitely
probably was like, all right, enthusiasm.
Oh,
right.
wow.
And the setting is it was like a junior high auditorium as you
Yeah.
could see, and it not made to look
Or
exactly like what it
not
was.
exact. It was a
So
movie
look,
theater that they rented.
well, that was the that
Oh,
was
that
the
was for the,
theater,
yeah,
the
you're
first
right.
that first concert
Mhm.
scene where we're already like, yeah, where we're already
Yep.
monsters.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's out on in Long Island, Mamaroneck, I think, as I recall.
Hmm.
But no, that was actually like an old empty school that we shot in up in Dundas, Canada.
Hmm.
Um, that first scene of driving in the Lamborghinis is
Yeah.
in downtown Dundas. And so they had all these extras, just hundreds and hundreds of extras to come to watch, right? And no one ever mentioned it wasn't really in the script. John got a way to get these two Lamborghinis and have the dealer just let us use them for free. Those Lamborghinis are like $250,000
Yeah.
at the time each.
Christ.
Crazy,
Ballers.
crazy.
Yeah.
So the dealer, like for some reason, wanted to let John borrow a Canadian car dealer these
Hmm.
two Lamborghini, ridiculously expensive cars. Now, no one asked me, but I don't drive a stick shift. So
Oh,
and they
wonderful.
and they yeah, and driving a $250,000 car. So I'm like trying to drive this stick shift and it's not going well at all. And I'm, practically leaving the transmission in the middle of the street. And the other aspect of, as I said, they used to sew me into that leather jumpsuit
Mm.
and they'd rip the stitches out and it would come off in one piece and then I'd put it back on. And, it was skin tight. And so it was sewn right to the boots to make it all one
Oh
piece.
no.
Boots, since when I first get out in that first scene, I kind of have those cars are really low, and I
Yeah.
kind of had to legs out and get up, and I was young, I couldn't do that now, but I was in my 20s then I could do that. But when I got out, when we did the first take, John was like, no, 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 we got the bottoms of his shoes or boots are all, they've got to be painted. They have to be black. It all has to be black.
Hmm.
So they painted the bottoms of my boots. Now the interior of the white Lamborghini that I was driving was also white leather on the floor everywhere, white leather, gorgeous, beautiful. So they're like, okay, the light's changing. We gotta shoot. And I'm like, I'm still leaving footprints of paint as I'm walking on I'm standing on like newspaper or something.
Yep.
No, no, we got to do it. I said, okay, but I don't think these are dry yet. Anyway, I get in there. I mean, there's black paint all over the floor of this guy's Lamborghini.
Oh
I,
gee.
I thought the guy was going to like die when he saw that. I mean, I felt so bad. And I called John over and I said, John, I said, my feet were still wet. I could, so
Hmm.
he showed the guy, that was the last take. He took the cars after that. But thankfully we had gotten enough footage that, rolled in and I didn't, stop and start too many times. And
Nice. Well, he was saying he had to push the car, like the scene where the car kind of rolls up. Is that just him pushing it into
yes,
some?
that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
And then the headlights,
Hmm.
going up and down. Yeah. And then me
But
spinning
what
out of it.
scene? What an amazing introduction to this band.
Hmm.
What
Right.
an
All those
I
posters are
yeah.
Yeah, that's just
those
your
posters.
headshot, right?
It was just
Yeah.
my headshot. And
And they
in
use
fact,
over the end credits. Your headshot is just there next to the end credits, which is
that's right. That's right.
great
That's right.
advertising. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was the photographer who is long gone now. Unfortunately, the guy who took that was a big time photographer in New York, and he took everybody's headshot, and and he was very proud of having his headshot in that movie. So anyway, he got
And
end credits.
luckily, the soundtrack has been on YouTube for years, ripped from the vinyl, so you can hear the cracking and everything.
Yeah,
Great.
Mhm.
And way before I started this blog, I used to listen to the soundtrack so much. I used to listen to the soundtrack so much, and especially Paradise We're on Our Way. I
yeah.
just think the music just means so much to me, and this movie means so much to me. And I've always liked villains more than I've liked heroes. I always consider the Black Roses sort of to be like anti-heroes. I
Mhm.
actually don't have a problem with the particular Black Roses band. I mean, one thing that was really kick-ass and progressive about the Black Roses, they had a female lead guitarist. I
That's
mean,
right.
I love how she comes out and she's like, looking
Yeah,
like,
with
yeah,
all the hair.
looking like Anne or Nancy Wilson from Heart. I mean, she's looking great. I mean, the whole 80, besides 80s country music, 80s rock and roll music is like the thing that I love. And so like I was like, they're great. They're great. And were any of the people that were in the actual Black Roses band besides yourself, were they musicians or are they just actors or character actors?
Just actors. So the ones on stage in the concert scenes at the school are all actors, other than Carmine, who played the drummer. That's actually Carmine Appice who plays the drums. And in fact, he's got one line in the movie in that scene where Morehouse comes in to see me, and I'm in regular clothes, and I he says something to me, and he gets like a thing, and of course he looks right in the camera.
Of course.
We love that. And John was like, no, let's do another one. Carmine, don't look in the camera. Every time he looked in the camera. But I
Yeah.
What?
loved him.
Yeah.
But Carmine would stay up all night and then he'd show up in the set, early in the morning. He'd just be dog tired. And I'm like, didn't you sleep? No, man, I was out partying. Oh, I'm having so much fun. It was
What
great.
the Black Rose? I know this is a really bizarre question, but rewatching this movie recently, what do you think the Black Rose's motives actually were? What do you think their motive actually was if you had to decipher?
Well,
Dominic,
I think the intent of John and Cindy, who co-wrote the script, I think the idea was that just this force coming to the world, a satanic force, via music and via getting, trying to appeal to a younger generation to say, you can control your own destiny, you can control the world, you can make your own choices, you don't have to listen to your parents, and you are a, this is your time, and you understand, I understand you, I was you. So the idea was, I think, that showing that that this, like they're studying poetry in class, right? But then they
right?
find, well, they think Damien's a poet because he's written these songs that speaks to them. It's not, Yeats doesn't speak to them, and whoever else they discuss in the movie, but they are getting a message that they understand, like we all did as teenagers through music. When you first discover the music that you discover as a teenager, you do feel it speaking to you. You do feel like it recognizes you in a way that you didn't expect, and it says, and you think, oh my God. And then that band, whoever it was, or those handful of bands that we grew up with loving,
Mhm.
we love for the rest of our lives, or those artists, right? It's I think it's cyclical. I think it's generational.
Yeah.
And our parents went through it, and their parents went through it, and my children have gone through it, and their children, God willing, will go through it too. So I think having that hook of the music, of bringing the devil to earth as a heavy metal rock star, it's kind of a brilliant idea. And
What about the
and
Beatles?
right, right.
What about the Beatles? Did your parents squawk when you were listening to Elvis? Yeah.
That's right. Remember when your kid got that haircut? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So they even mentioned the Kingston Trio. The Kingston Trio could not be any more white bread, but they were huge at the time when they were huge. And the idea of you know, uh, people understanding themselves through music that they enjoy was a huge thing. Listen, they wouldn't show Elvis from, below
Right.
the
That's
chest because
scandalous.
they
Yep.
had hips,
Yep.
right?
Very scandalous.
Yeah. So our older son is actually an actor, and he's been playing Elvis in a show called Million Dollar Quartet
Oh,
around the
wow.
country. And then there's a sequel called A Million Dollar Christmas. Do you know these shows? They're
Mm.
musicals based
Sounds
on an
familiar.
event in 1956 where Elvis, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins, who all started at the same studio called Sun Records in
Mhm.
Memphis, go back to kind of see the guy Sam Phillips who founded it. It was like a converted gas station that became a studio. Anyway, that's where they all started their careers. But uh, our older son has been playing Elvis now. He just finished his sixth production on Sunday,
Oh,
and
wow.
Congrats. That's
he's done a
awesome.
lot of other things too. But getting the impact of how people still react to that music,
Yep.
and I'm talking about people older than any of us on this
Hmm.
chat. It's kind of amazing, and he's seeing that firsthand. He's in his 20s and seeing that firsthand. And I said, yeah, it happens every generation. It happened with Frank Sinatra. It happened with Bing
Hmm.
Crosby. It happened with Al Jolson.
Yeah.
Those kind of followings too, and people, the parents of the people.
Ragtime. Oh,
Right.
ragtime. Very scandalous. Yes.
What does that all mean? Why is it making me feel something? A
Exactly. It's the
good song.
syncopation. Oh.
Right, right. A good song not only moves you by its notes and its melody, but it moves you by its lyrics. You
Yep.
identify with it. Makes you feel an emotion by the marriage of the melody and the lyrics. So, and I think this music in Black Roses does that in a big
Yep.
way. I agree with you completely, James.
My favorite scene in the entire movie is very cathartic. It's very haunting, but it's very beautiful. Is when I guess the teacher finally gives up on his quest to expose the Black Roses as demonic. And there's a line in Paradise We're on Our Way and our time is getting nearer. And you look at him, you sort of allude to him that you know that he knows.
And then
I
the
think,
door closes.
yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
such a beautiful scene.
I'm so glad you noticed that because that was something that John and I agreed on. I said, because where's the cutaway in this song? I said, when are you going to have the parents leave? How long are you going to have them listen? And, he said, I don't know. He said, I'm not really sure. And I said, can we look through the lyrics? And I said, there's got to be something meaningful in that last shot. And
Yeah.
then Liv came in the next day and he had storyboarded with the door closing and people filing out and the door closing and just a close up on me and I gave him the eyebrow raise we thought we nailed it. We got it. We got that.
How
And Matt
dear.
kind of one quizzical look like, is this okay? I guess I can leave it. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm going to the bar.
Mhm.
And then all hell breaks loose.
This is so banal. I have to leave. Like, come on.
Well, so bizarre how the lyrics alluded or foreshadowed the film. I don't know if the music, if there was like the film was being written at the same time as the music, or it was vice versa or in conjunction. But I've always found that scene and that music, that particular line of that song, to be so haunting and so eerie because it's just it has a premonition of everything to come. And then, like I love the sort of stare off between you two as he leaves and you
Yeah.
say our time is near. I think that is a genius choice of directing.
Oh, thanks. John would have loved to hear that because it was his favorite moment too in the movie, and certainly among mine as well. And
Mhm.
I think I'm so glad you appreciate it. That's huge because that's exactly what he intended.
And I
He
never
And
just loves that white bathrobe and then Full Metal. Love it.
right,
That's
right,
great.
right. Yeah,
Hmm.
that
and
yeah
I
that
of the
bathrobe was kind of yeah kind of a white trench coat. I think it was
Yeah.
actually it actually belonged to the costumer. I think it was actually hers, and then she put it on. We got to
Nice.
cover you up, and yeah, and then the
Hmm.
scarf. Yeah, she was great. She was great. She literally it took her 15 minutes every day to sew me into that costume. It was tedious,
Wow, it's
and
like you and Olivia Newton-John in Greece where they had to sew her into her pants every night. Yeah.
yeah.
right, right,
Six
yeah. In
degrees
fact,
right
I think
there.
they were the same pants, Helena. They were the.
Nice.
I do
And
have the codpiece. I do have that whatever leopard
Oh,
print or whatever print.
I hope it's
Yeah,
in a shadow box. I mean, put that in a shadow box if you don't have it already.
it's not, yeah, it's in a box somewhere, but I don't know. I can't
If you need
exactly.
me to shadow box it for you, you know.
Okay,
uh,
okay. I thought about. I was going to give it to the win a date with Damien person, and then when I found I
Oh my God. Well, if you give it to me, I'll put it next to my my Xanadu Muses that I have the original art for. So it'll
oh
be
wow,
yes. So
cool, cool. No, the girl was like 15, and I thought, no, I can't do that.
probably not
Trauma.
appropriate for giving a
Believe
cod
me,
piece.
yeah, no, that wouldn't have been good.
I mean, think about the
I
golden memories.
Yeah.
I never thought of the Black Roses as satanic. I thought they were more intergalactic, interplanetary, sort of other dimension creatures like the one from Rock and Roll Nightmare, which that scene hits you. The ending of Rock and Roll Nightmare, you know, he's
Well,
like,
that's angels. That's angels and demons. So I mean, this is continuing the angels and demons sort of thing, except it's more like demons. I mean, if you were to go back in time and stick John McElthor as the intercessor at the end of this,
Yeah.
just would have been perfect.
oh, so having Damien fight Thor?
Yes, that would have been awesome.
That's a great idea. John would have
That would
loved
have
that idea. That could have been the sequel, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
right there.
Black Roses is the spiritual sequel to Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But
And you
definitely.
can tell it's a lot better made too.
yes, it is.
You
Oh
I
don't
yeah.
have those awkward showers. I mean, yeah.
The budget was better and John just he was such a student of filmmaking, and a student of process in general. He came from the theater as well. So he's just a really smart guy. So he knew what he wanted to accomplish and he knew how to budget for it. He knew how to accomplish it. We started out with one director of photography, and that didn't work out. And we changed horses like about less than 2 weeks in. He
Heard
found,
about that.
yeah, Paul Minchnick was great. And Paul shot the rest of the film, and then he shot the Jitters as well with John and I. He
I
was wonderful.
like Black Roses is definitely a better film, and I think it's definitely better made. Not because
More
only because,
cohesive.
but
Yeah.
because the plot is there's more at stake. I love Rock and Roll Nightmare, but I think there's more
Yeah,
at stake. With Black Roses, and I
yeah.
think it blends so many different genres together: sci-fi, horror, and musical. Which I want to get your opinion about. I mean, we're sitting here discussing this on a cult musicals podcast, cult musicals on Instagram. You're also talking to two people who consider, well, hopefully, Helena, that consider Howard the Duck to be a musical. Do you consider Black Roses to be a traditional musical?
Um, I do, as far as a musical film. Yeah, I do, because it's got a lot of music in it, and the music. I can't imagine the movie without the music. That's
And
my.
ultimate
That's my.
story. Yeah.
You can't imagine telling that story without the music that exists. Like if
Hmm.
you remove that music, that movie doesn't work as nearly as well. And in fact, like I said, I think there could have even been more music in it.
I think so.
Uh, it's interesting you mentioned Howard the Duck. Now, do you know my relationship to Howard the Duck?
I
Please
do
tell
not.
us.
Well, there you go. Let's see
Regale
what
us, please.
just
Oh my God.
so a little nugget that you happen to mention Howard the Duck. So, do you know who played the voice of Howard the Duck by any
I,
chance?
Helena
I
probably.
I do,
So
but
there
I
was an
can't.
actor named Chip
Yes.
Zion. Chip
Right.
Zion. He was
Yep.
a wonderful Broadway actor. In fact, he's on Broadway right now. He just opened in a new show, Barry Manilow's musical called Harmony.
Okay.
And yeah, Chip plays the narrator of it. So the Harmony is actually a true story about the harmonists. There were six young men in Nazi Germany who were they were like huge stars. They made movies, they did concerts, 6 of them, and then all of a sudden, after many years of great popularity, they just disappeared. They were just because they were Jewish. So
Oh,
Chip plays one of them, who is the surviving member, and he narrates the whole musical. Anyway, I mentioned Chip because he was the voice of Howard the Duck, which was supposed to be a big career change for him because he was a big staple of Broadway. But we did a musical on Broadway together called Falsettos. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
aware of.
Mhm.
Yeah, we were in the Broadway company of Falsettos together as 2 of the leads. And anyway, so I just was watching an interview of Chip, for Harmony, but he mentions Howard the Duck and what a huge deal it was for him. And in fact, he turned down playing another great Broadway part to do that movie.
But
And
you know
had he
what?
not,
Duck is Howard the Duck opened the door for Marvel for what it is now. And Howard the Duck has some of the best music that's ever composed. And Leah Thompson singing all of her own songs.
right,
I mean,
right,
I don't consider these B movies bad movies. I think that term is coined by these elitist sort of East Coast movie critics. I don't consider these because I enjoy this more, Black Roses, more than I would. You couldn't make me watch Sound of Music at gunpoint. So, I mean,
that's
I
what I
love,
always say. It's like Xanadu or Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane is going in the wood chipper. That's what I always
right.
say. Yeah,
He loves Xanadu. Yeah, Xanadu is an adorable film.
just saying
Yeah.
that. It's right here.
Grease. Look,
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So I'm a little bit of an obsessive fan of cult musicals. So
That was
Grease
also
2.
made a Broadway musical. Xanadu was a Broadway musical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Stage version. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And we prefer Grease 2 way over Grease. I mean,
Yeah.
you
one,
do.
my friend one
So, by
time
the
has,
way, okay, same similar connection. It's all
ah,
6. Nobody. Adrian Zemed, who was in Grease 2, of course,
yes.
replaced in Falsettos on Broadway, and so Chip Zien, Howard the Duck, Sal Viviano, Damien, and Adrian Zemed from Grease 2 were all on Broadway in the same show, playing the 3 leads at the same time. How about that?
It's 6 degrees of cult musical separation. We
There you
always
go.
talk
Kismet.
we
I love it.
we
Yeah.
always talk about how cult musicals are so interconnected and incestuous. They are because there's a lot of love that goes into it. And then I'll get into my final point before on one of my episodes, there's a one of my friends, Roxy Tart. She goes, "I can't believe there's people that walk the street that like Grace better than Grace too." And I was like, "That's why we're friends." But at what point did you? Because I mean, was this released straight to VHS or was this released in like a small amount of theaters?
A very small amount of theaters.
Yeah,
And
super
but
limited.
it came out on VHS because of the box, and because they wanted to be able to sell the box. I think at the time they sold it for $70 to video stores. A
Mhm.
video store huge
Yep.
at the time. But that was literally anytime I went to a video store and I would see it, and at our local video store, which we used to rent from at the time, used to always the guy would see me and goes, "Oh, that Black Roses thing, it's so hard to stack. You can't stack that movie because of
Yes, you can't.
the
Nope, it's not flat.
that cover was amazing though. That cover art was fantastic. I
That's
love
when I
that
have
cover.
an eBay bookmark for. Like every day, I'm like, oh, is there one in my price range? Oh, I'm gonna get.
Yeah, yeah. My mother had one. I don't even
Oh,
know if I still. Yeah, I probably still have one somewhere. I have to look.
that
But
would be one of the highlights of my collection if I had one of those.
Well, I was
yeah,
curious because I know with VHS, a lot of movies were released strictly to VHS because it was more lucrative. I mean, Puppet Master was released straight to VHS. So I mean,
right.
I think it would have found its audience, I guess, on VHS and also what is it, Rhonda Shear?
Oh, well, there was USA Networks because they would play it. They played that for Commander USA. They played it for USA Saturday Nightmares. They played it for Up All Night. I mean, they would drag that out anytime for any show. And it was on so many times. And that's where I saw it along with Rock and Roll Nightmare, along
Right.
with Trick or Treat, along with all of those great movies. Oh God, what was the
Yeah.
one? The Spookies, which is not a
Ah,
musical, but is also in that collection.
did you grow up
What?
in Portland?
I grew up in Portland, yeah.
Yeah. So you know that. So they screened Black Roses, it was actually I'm trying to remember the name of the theater. It
Hollywood,
screens. I'm sorry.
Hollywood Theater.
It might be the Hollywood Theater.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a guy who screens a lot of older movies, and John was supposed to attend that, and they actually invited me. I couldn't. I was in a Broadway show at the time, and so anyway, they John took ill and didn't go,
Oh,
and they did a talk back afterwards, and John had died during the screening of the movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
oh.
And so they announced it after the screening of the movie, which was just, I can't even imagine. I wasn't there, but
I might have actually been there. Now must have been a few years ago. It was probably another James. You remember me mentioning Weird War
Yeah.
last time? They're the people that did they screened Sons of Steel here, so they do a
uh,
lot of those kind of heavy metal
yeah,
events
yeah,
like that.
it was the
That's
same group.
that's tragic. It's so odd
Oh,
because I mean he's on the commentary track, so they must have done that kind of right before. I'm trying to see when this DVD came out, but it doesn't say.
Helena,
2000.
yeah.
collector of physical media, and she rents movies from there's a huge video store in Portland, and she rents
Nonprofit video store with 25,000 titles. It's a block from my house. So
Oh,
I'm
that's
gonna
great.
go look for the jitters as soon as I get done here.
The Jitters, or you can find it online too. I mean,
Oh
you
no,
can
no, I'm
watch it.
gonna go rent it. I'm gonna go pay my money to the nice people.
My favorite part of the Jitters, I mean, there's a lot of great things, and you'll recognize some people from Black Roses, but
Mhm.
um, the opening credits are just adorable. Kind of like the Black Roses credits with there's the animation that
Yeah.
under the cars. That's cool,
Mhm.
but the whole opening credits are all animated too, and
Oh,
that's kind of
nice.
cool. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah.
I'm,
It's a good movie. It's a good movie and funny, very
that's
funny.
it says here it's filed under vampires. So is it a
It,
vampire movie?
it is, but it's a Chinese vampires, which are
Oh,
called
Jiangxi.
Yongxi. Yes, exactly. The
Yes.
hopping. That's right.
Yep, yep,
And,
yep.
and so,
Brilliant.
yeah,
Oh my
that is
God.
the genre of that film. And yeah, I'm not a Gyeongsi, obviously, but there's a wonderful actor named Marilyn Takuda plays opposite me, and then James Hong, and anyway, Frank Dietz, who's in
So
Black Roses. He
wow.
was great.
Okay, then I'm
John
going to
C.
put this in the same collection as Ninja 3 The Domination, if you've seen that
Okay,
one.
uh-uh.
I
So
haven't.
that's a double, I'm going to have to do a double feature of Ninja 3 The Domination and this one because that's not only a workout themed horror movie, but it's also a Chinese themed horror movie, Japanese
Right.
themed. It's all in the same
Well,
and it's got the same people.
and the whole Gyeongsi thing is that they become this, not unlike what we would think of now, like from The Walking Dead, a zombie. They are undead because they didn't die at the time appointed by
Mhm,
Buddha.
mhm,
They've died by mysterious or uh,
mhm.
unreasonable circumstances. So those deaths have to be avenged, and then they can move on. Their soul can move on. So that's kind of what we try and do in the movie, and it's actually it's a very interesting script, and we had a lot of fun shooting it.
Well, I'm
And we
excited
also,
to watch.
yeah, about a year after Black Roses, we shot that.
Okay. So are they able to stop the Jiangxi with the they paste the little piece of paper on their forehead?
Yellow paper that has to have chicken blood characters on it, and then it has to be pasted to the forehead. Yeah, there's a
You
whole
know,
that's,
that's
but it's
yeah.
all comic. It's all done tongue in cheek, and it delivers. There's a wonderful actor, Jonathan Goldstein, who was on Drake and Josh. I don't know if you remember that series. He played the
Yeah, yeah.
dad on Drake. He's in that, and oh, anyway, there's a lot of wonderful people in it.
Oh,
It's
that's
it's
awesome.
a film
And Helena,
and
if
great
you want to,
special effects. The guy who did the special effects in that has gone on to a huge career in special effects, and that's
Which one who
his.
was it? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'm going to blank on his name.
Okay.
My God, I could just see his face. Steve Wang. Steve
Okay.
Wang has a
Yes, I
huge.
know that.
Now they make these. They make like life-size dinosaurs and these huge sculptures. He still
Yep.
does film production as well, but his company is huge. But Steve, that
Yep.
was one of his films, and John got him to do it, on a low budget because
Mhm.
Steve was really starting out and he was a protege of, other great people in that field. And Steve's makeup in this, the monsters are fantastic. Oh my God, there's a guy that splits open. It's fantastic. You'll love it.
The monster
Nice. Excited.
turned into looks like the monster in Rock and Roll Nightmare. Was that any same of the same production crew or anything like that? Because the monster that Thor fights is the same. Looks like the same monster you turned into.
Very
There are
similar.
some of John's buddies who were Richie Alonso and Frank did some sculpting, and a guy named Tony Bua who is also he plays the guy. He's the guy who runs over his mother and then actually Big Pussy father. Vinny
Yeah.
Pastore's the list is, there's only two kinds of guys who wear an earring,
You
and I
fat.
don't pirates and those kind of guys, and I don't see a ship in our driveway, something like that. Anyway,
Nice.
Tony did some sculpting too, and then a guy named Richie Alonso did most of my monster work. He was great. They were
How
really
long
wonderful.
did
And
you
Dan,
have to be in the chair for every day with all of that? Were you down for
well,
a long time?
yeah, I went before we ever started, and they did a mold of my head, and then
Yes.
built everything from that. And yeah, it was. Oh, and then also I wore, which really are not even visible in the movie. I wore scleral lenses. They're called.
There's that
They're
one
like,
scene where there's a good close up and you get to see it. Yeah.
yeah, but you could. So the scleral lenses, I still have problems with my eyes from scleral lenses because
Oh,
you're really supposed to
oh,
wear them.
that just grosses me out.
They're so thick and they're big. They're
Yeah.
bigger than your. And to get them in my eyes was, and then we would only film with them so long. I wore them like 4 scenes, but you can really only see them once in the movie.
Right.
But they're beautiful. And
Yeah.
then I gave them to the guy who made them because they were fantastic. They were really gorgeous. I
Hmm.
mean, but they were worth like $4,000. They were beautiful.
Hmm.
Glass, putting an ashtray in your eye. They were
Oh,
ridiculous.
oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so now if I walk outside and it's like cooler than 60 degrees, I cry.
I
Oh
was
my
gonna
God.
you can add, of course, his movie to your midnight viewing as well as the other movie you're talking about. And if you want to add a musical in there, you can watch The Last Dragon with Vanity and
Oh,
DeBarge with DeBarge.
love it. Love it.
But
I sang another movie called, well, I've sung in a lot of movies, but the first movie I ever did, I sang in. It was a Paul Morrissey film. Paul Morrissey, yeah, you know
Oh,
who Morrissey is, yeah. My
yeah.
first movie called Spike of Bensonhurst. It's a boxing movie. Ernie
Uh-huh.
Ernest Borgnine is the star, and Sasha Mitchum. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
wonderful actresses. Maria Bello's in it, and some wonderful actors and actresses.
Mhm.
But I sing 3 songs in Italian, and then I had a scene with Ernest Borgnine that got cut.
Oh,
But it was a good scene. Anyway. That was my first
so
movie
awesome. Yeah, I'm
a
a
couple of
big
years.
fan of like Andy Warhol's Dracula, Andy Warhol's Frankenstein. Like, so
Yeah,
I
they're all
gotta check that out
Morrissey.
too.
Yeah, they're all
Amazing.
Paul
Lucky
Morrissey.
me.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm three
Oh,
degrees.
brilliant guy. Yeah, brilliant guy.
Nice.
Yeah,
I want
but most
to
of the stuff I sing is not heavy metal. I've done about almost 80 albums of standards and Broadway stuff, and I do concerts with symphonies all over the world. And that's this past weekend I was in Arkansas doing a concert with the symphony.
Nice.
And primarily what I do, and you can find a lot of footage of that or a lot of albums, and
Cool.
that's
If you ever come to
talk.
Portland, hit me up.
I've been with the Portland Symphony, and I've got a brother there actually too. One of my brothers and
Nice.
his wife, they raised their kids there. I love Portland. It's
It's
fantastic.
fun.
not
Such a
only
great.
Let's see the video store. Yes.
not that I want to get into your legacy, but the last
Oh,
is at what point did you see this movie growing into this cult midnight thing that it became? At what point did you see it grow to this cult thing?
somewhere probably in the late '90s, like probably 10 years after we made it. That's when kids would come to stage doors, like I'd come out of my Broadway show and there'd be a kid there, like as I described to you earlier, or I'd do a concert and the same deal. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then I would get a lot. I still get a lot of you know like people see videos of me singing with an orchestra, and then they'll put a message below. So that's kind of when I saw that, and I realized how proud I was of it, and how thankful I was that I got that experience with, not only for the wonderful people, and I'm still in touch with John's family. I loved John. He was great. We had a house in California for almost 20 years, or a little over 20 years actually, And so when I'd go out there, I'd see him, and not often enough. And you know, I mourn for the fact that he died as young as he did, because his mind was so fertile, and he was such a good writer and such a creative spirit that I miss what else he would have brought us. And his stepson, writer, he writes novels. Jesse, who's also in Black Roses and in The Jitters. He was, a little boy at the time. He was like 4 or 5. And both of John's other children, Lucia and JC, John Jr., John Cody, are in the arts and wonderful performers. And Cindy, his ex-wife, whom he wrote these scripts with, is still active in the industry and wonderfully creative. And I'm in touch with all of them. And like I said, we recently got together just on Zoom, the cast, and talked about that. And in fact, Frank and I write to each other. Frank Dietz, who played Johnny, the student.
Yeah. The 28-year-old high school student, yes.
Right. He always gets grief about, he and I are actually the same age. But yeah, I guess he looked a little long in the tooth for a student at the time, but he looks great. He's also a wonderful artist. He's drawn for Disney. He's directed movies, written movies, acted in series, and he's had a wonderful career and still working, and a wonderful guy. He does a lot of those shows where people come up, like Comic-Con kind of shows. And he's always saying, "You should come. People would be thrilled to meet Damien." I said, "Well, I don't think anybody's that interested." But anyway,
people are horror cons, conventions.
You would be surprised.
James, maybe if I brought the cod piece, maybe, or the wig.
Hold it up, yeah.
People love this. People love it. I'm very surprised that Vinegar Syndrome or Shout Factory or Arrow Video haven't released it on a special edition Blu-ray. I mean, it's a bare bones Blu-ray.
Yeah, I think Synapse released it on DVD, but I was just looking on the side here, and there is no Blu-ray release of this, which blows my mind. I think there was one in Germany, but that's not the same. Like even Sons of Steel is getting like a Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray. So someone's like, get on this. Like, where is this?
Especially with that music. I mean,
maybe that's what the problem is trying to get the rights. I mean,
maybe, although I think that the producer owns all the rights. I think he bought them outright when they originally did them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the guys that, like Mark, I don't think gets Marcy, I don't think she gets a residual from the music, or Carmine. We talked about it a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, well, I know Glickenhaus. I'd have to kind of see like where that kind of all went to, because that could be a factor.
Yeah, I don't know if Jim, I don't even know if he's still living. I think he wouldn't be that old. He'd probably be about 80 maybe, or 70.
But he was kind of a big producer of a lot of things. So I wonder what his catalog is.
Yeah, Jim was, and he was a great guy, and he loved John. He absolutely loved John. He wanted to do more movies with John and with me. Every time he came to New York, he took me out to dinner. It was really nice. He and his wife came to see me in many Broadway shows. So anyway, ancient history.
I see people on Instagram. I follow Black Roses, the hashtag, and people have shirts and they have hats and they've got beanies. And I always message people. I'm like, "Oh my God, I love Black Roses." And like, "Oh my God, I love Black Roses too." And so I think it might be on Tubi now, or it might be on Plex. It's streaming now.
Oh, wow.
So that's why your generation seeing it. I think it's on Tubi. If Helena can correct me, it's either on Tubi or Plex, but it's streaming now. And I think it is Tubi, so you can stream it, and I think that's getting an audience as well. I think it's categorized under horror, but a lot of horror people love it, and so I think if you ever go to or are invited to a horror convention, I think you should do it, because people love this film, and the horror community loves it, and it's very. I just love this film as a musical, but also horror. I mean, there's something very endearing about 80s horror. And I think, John also did Darkness Falls, which is one of my favorite horror films about the tooth fairy that terrorizes that town. But there's something really endearing about 80s horror. I think that was the last decade that had really, truly original horror films. Yeah. I mean, and not scream ad nauseum, but I think the 80s was just one of those times where originality just thrived in terms of musicals, in terms of horror, in terms of sci-fi, and I don't think we'll ever be able to capture that again, but we can relive it through movies like
Sense of experimentation. I mean, we really don't have that sense of experimentation that they had back then, where it's like we're just going to throw stuff in here and see what sticks, and that's what
Right.
makes it wonderful.
Right. Well, and I also appreciated John because there's so many elements in that movie that he brought together, and in all of his movies, even the earlier ones. That's I don't see that anymore. My wife is actually shooting an independent movie right now in Baltimore, and it's very tough. You know, it's a very different industry, and they waited to shoot it until the strike was over, and but she's having a great time. But you know, it's much tougher to do that now. It's very
Mhm.
tough. And she's
Which
doing
you
it with
wouldn't
people
think.
who've done it before. It's not like their first time filming.
I mean, you think
But
in the Olympics you had to get film and you had to get special cameras, you had to have something. You would think it would be harder back then, but it's harder now to get things
it is
through.
hard. It is harder, and the equipment is so expensive, and somehow, you know, back then the equipment John was able to find it and or able to barter for it, and in the jitters, in fact, there's a lot of walking scenes outside, and he was able to barter and talk to all these businesses he went before it, asking them to paying them a little extra to leave their lights on so we could shoot at
Mhm.
night, walk down the street, it would look like, you know, the businesses were still open, and he was ingenious about that, and I learned so much about filmmaking from him, which is really
you've had a long career on the stage where you've done all these beautiful things and you sing. And I listened to your YouTube singing videos, and you have a very beautiful operatic voice. But doing all these things and doing theater and doing opera and singing symphonies, when you're doing it, does Black Roses ever cross your mind when you're on
oh,
stage?
absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, listen, if I hadn't, I don't know, you know, if I hadn't been a stage actor, he never would have cast me as Damien, because you know, to have the ability to move around and fill out a concert scene,
Mhm.
not just, but to actually, you know, embody that. I had already toured. By that time, I had toured in the Pirates of Penzance. I'd done the national tour of that. I had done, you know, as Frederick, I did that like 1,200 performances.
Ah,
Love
I
it.
did a lot. That was a cash cow for me. I'd done the Three Musketeers was my first Broadway show. You know, a lot of sword fighting, very long hair. I had done Hair, the musical Hair, in the lead with that opposite David Naughton from another horror movie called
Nice.
American Werewolf in London.
Love
Remember
it.
that movie? Yeah.
That's a great one. How could you? That's one of the most famous horror movies of all time. Yeah.
So David and I were the stars of a national tour of the musical Hair.
Oh, wow,
We were
that's
the
great.
in 1985.
Awesome.
So I think that, you know, first of all, John coming from the theater, but also he wanted a theater actor to be able to you know, just to move and to fill out this, especially if I wasn't going to be doing my own singing.
Mhm.
So I hope that, you know, I think that had a part, and I'm proud of it.
Mhm.
When I look back, I'm proud of what that was and what that is. And you know, I wish we would have done a sequel a few years later. I really do,
Get that
for a lot of reasons.
crowdfunding.
Yeah,
We'll get that crowdfunding going. Stand
let's
up
get
and
it
be
going.
counted. Stand up
Yeah,
and be counted. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
a lot of things done these days. I mean, the power of sequels and the power of media and the power of spinoff really is in the hands of fans. You know, we're responsible really for getting a lot of by writing and begging these home media companies to release Blu-rays. We're responsible for like Helena's the theater that she frequents. They do Earth Girls Are Easy and Howard the Duck and Sons of Steel and Black Roses. I mean, there's a only one theater I think in Atlanta that does the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, and Grease 2 that's in Nashville. So it really, fans don't forget this stuff. I think sometimes there's so much red tape in terms of rights and stuff, but I feel like fans have the power and they have the passion to get merch and to get, and Black Roses, if you look under like comments for the soundtrack, people are like, oh my God, I love this movie. Oh my God, I love this soundtrack. This is such an underrated soundtrack. It's such an underrated movie. And it truly is. It's an incredible, I find it a great movie. I wish there would have been subsequent media, like maybe a graphic novel would have been great. A
Yeah,
comic book would have been
Mhm.
even better.
that would be
Even
great. And John,
additional.
yeah, because he was such a great artist. I'm telling you, his storyboards were like comic book quality. I'm assuming they still exist somewhere. I'm sure that hopefully his kids have them. but maybe that's something to think of. I should maybe suggest that to them. Maybe they should publish them, James. There'd probably be an interest to see those.
I was going to
There's an
say that the movie Mandy, if you remember that movie that was out in 2018. Oh, it's classic. I mean, it has an evil folk music singer at its heart. And so they did a like the soundtrack, he sings a couple of songs on it, but about 3 years after it came out, they discovered, in heavy air quotes, a full album of Jeremiah Sand's B-sides. So they
Uh,
released it as that character. So they brought Linus Roach back as Jeremiah Sand and had him record a whole album. And so we got a whole extra album of this weird character's folk music. So,
oh,
I mean,
wow.
you could do that for Damien. That would be awesome.
Great idea. And I love Linus Roach. He's awesome.
Oh,
He's
if
such a good actor.
you haven't seen Mandy, check it out. It's so good.
No, I'm going to. I'm glad you told me about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you know, if was there ever any talk, any like serious talk or non-serious talk about the group that got together to form Black Roses? If there was any talk about them releasing music during that era of under the label Black Roses?
I don't know. I'm not sure why that didn't happen, or I mean, because they could have even done concert or something, but no, I don't think there was, James. I think but like I said, it did spend like 40 some weeks on the heavy metal charts,
Yeah. You would
and
have thought that would have spun off something. Yeah.
yeah, and I got calls for interviews at the time, and I said, it's
Not
not me.
me.
You want to talk to Mark Free? He does all the singing. He's that fantastic high rock voice. I
Mhm.
said, I sing and I sing well, but I don't, that's not my thing. That's not my wheelhouse. But no, I don't know why they didn't. That would have been awesome. Yeah.
There's another pop musical connection. You said you played Frederick in Pirates of Penzance, and one of Helene and I's favorite cult musicals is the Pirate movie with Christopher Atkins
Mhm.
Oh
And also
yeah.
the Pirates of Penzance with Mandy Patinkin,
and Linda Ronstadt.
which
No,
I love.
it's Kevin Klein, not Mandy
Kevin
Patinkin, but
Kline,
Kevin
that's right. Kevin Kline. Yep.
Rex Smith. Rex Smith plays my part. Played my part. He played Frederick, and then in the movie, I think it's Angela Lansbury
Oh, as
plays.
Ruth.
Yes,
Love.
as I worked with Angela. We played the Palladium in London together.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, it was her first time back on the London stage in like 30 years,
Oh
and
my
we did a
gosh.
whole Gary Herman with the London Philharmonic, and it was great. She was an amazing lady, and what a dame, man. She was awesome, and just she remained a great friend right till her death, and
So
I
lucky.
just
That's so amazing.
yeah.
What hope the legacy? I mean, we can only hope, but I mean, this movie does have a legacy. Obviously, we're talking about it. But what do you hope as an actor and a singer and someone that has come around to this film and does love it? What do you hope the legacy could eventually be for Black Roses? What would you like to see done for Black Roses that hasn't been done yet?
Well, I guess I would like it to be recognized more mainstream in the sense that for John to get the due as a filmmaker that he deserved
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
deserves, and just I think you hit it on the head, James. That era of metal metal movies, and especially metal movies that were also horror genre.
Yeah.
It's a very small window of movies that succeeded in that, and I think Black Roses is chief among them, and uh, that a few couple generations that have grown up with that and revere it like you seem to, both of you, and I appreciate that on John's behalf. Um, uh, I love that. I love that you focused on it, and I'm so glad you contacted me because it gives me the chance not only to relive some wonderful memories, but to pay due to John and to Cindy Cyril, who co-wrote it with him and co-created it, and all those wonderful people who made this who made that music. It deserves to be
Yes.
looked on as a genre that is was not easy to make, not easy to finance, and that is important in the history of movie making.
There's a
It's
Absolutely.
book.
very
There's a book about horror metal movies. I don't remember. I saved it on my Goodreads, but I'm pretty sure Black Roses is mentioned in there, along with I think Black Roses is better than Edge of Hell / Rock and Roll Nightmare, but I also think Black Roses is better than The Gate. Do you remember The Gate?
I've
The
heard of it. I don't think I've ever seen it, but I've definitely heard of it. Yeah.
It's pretty good, but yeah, if I had my choice, I would rather watch Black Roses.
All
That's
right.
probably that's probably sacrilege, but I don't care.
Now we
I'm the
haven't
one
asked,
putting Citizen Kane in the wood chipper, and I'm saying that I would prefer Black Roses. So
Right. Right.
haven't asked this question in a long time, but we used to ask people to name the cult that would follow. So you know the Rocky Horror has their own names of people who follow them. Shock Treatment
Right.
does as well. But we named like the Teen Witch, the movie Teen Witch. We named the followers Popular Girls. Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. We named the Chicken Ranchers. But if you had to, and for Dick Tracy, the people who like Dick Tracy, we said the fans are called the Dicks. But if
right.
you had to follow, if you had to name the cult that would follow Black Roses, that are like enamored with it and love it, what do you think you would call the group, the cult, like the cult that would follow this movie?
I got
Well,
one.
so I'd have to say, to quote the movie, I call them in the one scene where I'm about to I guess transition into being the actual devil on the stage, is I call them you are the Black Roses, you are the flowers of evil.
I love that.
Flowers
All right, done.
of evil.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Flowers of Evil. That's
yeah.
I
perfect.
So you mentioned Rocky Horror. So my wife did Rocky Horror on Broadway as
oh my
one
god,
as wait, what are the two girls? Magenta, and she was either
Columbia.
Magenta.
Yeah, yeah.
She was Magenta. Yeah, yeah. And Daphne Rubin Vega was Columbia. Yeah,
Yeah,
on Broadway. Yeah, at Circle and Square. Yeah, my
That's
wife Liz Larson was a wonderful Broadway actress and
oh my god,
uh,
yes, I knew that was your wife.
wonderful star,
wow.
and a lot of movies, a lot of TV, and yeah, that's my wife. She's mother of
So
my
cool.
children.
A
And
talented family.
let me tell
Oh,
you, I prefer. Well, we both prefer Shock Treatment to Rocky Horror, but I prefer the Rocky Horror Broadway show more than I prefer the movie because there's
yeah.
more creative liberty. And I actually have seen a bootleg. I own a bootleg DVD copy somewhere in America of the Broadway revival, and it's so good. It's so
So
good.
yeah. So originally, her part was played by Joan Jett when it first
Yep,
opened. The
Fun.
revival.
bald, bald.
Right, right. And then Joan left, and the girl from Saturday Night Live. Oh, so good. I'm
And I guess
blanking on her. Anna Gasteyer. Yes, very good. Exactly, James. Anna Gasteyer took over for a few months, and then Liz replaced Anna Gasteyer. And by
That's
that time, also the guy who originally was Frankenfurter had left. That was Tom Hewitt had started,
yeah,
and Tom Hewitt was replaced by our dear friend Terrence Mann,
yeah.
who was the original Beast and Javert on Broadway, and he's like our best friend. He and his
Hi.
wife. Yeah.
so awesome.
Anyway, small world.
So for you
Yeah.
to be Broadway world to be sitting here talking about a rock horror musical, it's probably like two
To
different
us
worlds.
two idiots. I mean, hey, I mean,
No, this
that's
is
pretty rad.
fantastic. No, I love that you guys are so knowledgeable about this genre of films and a wide genre of films, but that you've included Black Roses in your canon. I really appreciate it. And on behalf of John and his family and
Yeah.
everybody else who had the pleasure of making it, I really, really am glad you asked me to do this. And it's a
This,
nice trip down memory lane
Our
for me.
pleasure. Our
this,
For an
pleasure.
old game.
this be my last question. Do you have a favorite, besides Black Roses, do you have a favorite really niche, underrated, weird, obscure musical movie that you like?
Oh, let's see. Um, God, I loved I don't know how obscure. Well, maybe it's obscure. The Last 5 Years, which came out maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. Did you ever see that? So it was a stage musical, and then they made it into and it's Anna. Oh, what's her name? Anna Adorable. She's in it, and not Anna Gasteyer, another Anna, little Anna. Oh
Wait,
my God, she's in
no,
the
yeah,
in where they, the singing groups, the college groups, the singing college groups. Oh my God, I
Oh,
can't think.
yeah. He's from Pitch Perfect.
Pitch Perfect, yes.
yeah.
Anna, what? I can't think of
Kendrick
her last
or something, or Yeah.
Yes. And she was a child actor on Broadway, so she's really, I mean, she's come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeremy Jordan plays opposite her, and it's a delightful film, and it's really well made, and it's all shot here in New York, and you know, I had friends that were in it, and you know, were responsible for helping to make it, and then the guy who wrote it is a dear friend of mine. I thought that was really well made, and they're really
Well,
both so good in it, and it's so hard to do that. It's so hard to do that on film. It just
well,
is.
well, you as like stage royalty and being just the stage presence, you're the total opposite of Damien. But I like to think that Damien's probably like your alter ego, the one that we all have within ourselves.
It definitely is.
You put your
That's my
cape up and you spin around, and then you're Damien. We
yeah,
want we
yeah.
want to see that. The hair extensions just pop right out.
Yeah, and when my kids watched it, they were like, "Oh, that's just Dad on a Saturday, that evil thing." You know, that's
Yeah, that's just Tuesday night. It's fine.
yeah, that's Dad after too much Dr. Pepper.
Yes.
But thank you so much. You
Yes,
mean
thank
so
you.
lot to people. I mean, I just feel elated that I got to talk to you. I never thought I'd be able to speak with you and more or less interview you, but thank you so much. You mean a lot to a lot of people in the horror community and the cult musical community. And a lot of people are excited that we got the opportunity to speak with you. And Helena being a film fan is elated as well. So thank you so
Yes.
much for taking the
Well,
time.
it was absolutely my joy and my pleasure, James and Helena, just to meet you. And again, I'm so glad you asked, and I'm so glad you included Black Roses in your canon. Watch The Jitters; you'll enjoy it, and
Going right now.
you'll get some
Mhm.
laughs for some of the right reasons, and you'll love James Hong. He is just delightful as ever.
I'm gonna hop
And
all the way over there to the
yeah,
video store.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
And
and Mary, by the
there's a
way.
guy who plays who does like the most hopping in the movie. You'll see it because he does the most hopping, and his name was Handiat Majda, and he was a Canadian actor, and
Mhm.
the guy was, you know, probably the age I am now, but he had to do a lot of hopping. You'll see when you
Oh,
watch.
yeah.
He
That
was
would
such a
be
good sport, and he was so funny. He made us all just laugh our heads off. Anyway,
Oh my
you'll appreciate.
God.
all over it.
And, yeah, and John did a great job with that too. And again, thank you so much
Of
for
course.
including
And
for
Mary,
words.
Yes. And rock
Very
on.
yes,
And
rock
a
on.
hard rock year.
This is
Yeah.
you do it this way or this way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will
Full
call
nose. Yeah.
yeah. When I we're actually supposed to have another little get together on Zoom with some we just located one of the girls that played oh, I can't remember her character name, but her name is Pat Strelyoff. She was a Canadian actress who was one of the students. She's
Mm.
the one, the principal out the or the counselor out the window.
Oh, the counselor
She
at the window scene. Yep.
pushed them out the window. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's Pat. And so Frank Dietz just found her. He wrote me this past week to say he
Oh,
found Pat, and so we're gonna all have a little get together, and
that's fun.
so I'll tell
I
them
think
all that.
I think this is the beginning of something. I think, I would love to see you guys at a horror convention. I mean, especially to contact like Rue Morgue or Rogue Morgue, the I can
Mhm.
contact the guy who does that. I mean, to do
Better.
like
Yeah.
magazine, the horror magazine. So I
Mhm.
think be the start of
Yeah,
something.
pass on my contact information to him. I'm happy to talk to him and or be involved in any of that because again, I think what principally what really pleases me is that John gets his due and he deserves it. He was a
Absolutely.
great creative spirit and he just brought people together in such a great way. He was just a you would have adored him as we all did.
Three of the best horror metal movies. I mean, he did them all within a year. So that amount of creativity and that amount of just, it's like catching lightning in a bottle, honestly.
That amount of metal. I mean, hell. Very
James,
metal. Yes.
we were talking just before we started when we first before I cut out and then I came back on the other platform. Um, you mentioned about what you're doing your doctorate in. That's fascinating. And I was just going to mention to you that Maria Schlatter, who is writing with Dolly, she's co-writing her musical because Dolly's preparing a Broadway musical of
Oh,
her life. And Maria wrote Dolly's Christmas movie that came out a couple of years ago that Dolly was in. You remember that, of course. So Maria Slaughter, I did a musical that she wrote, You may recognize her last name because she's the daughter of George Schlatter, who created and produced Laugh-In, and is still living.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, and tied to not only all the people from Laugh-In, but he also produced so many television specials and comedy specials and big musical concerts with Sinatra and everybody else. Anyway, so Maria Schlatter, if in your journey that you need, if you want to speak to her, hook you up with that. She's a great, smart, very smart lady and a wonderful writer. And she's like best friends with Dolly.
oh my
So,
God.
yeah.
Yep.
I met
See,
Dolly
that's
a
how I
long
would
time.
feel.
I
I was
saw
gonna say
Dolly
that.
a time ago in Dallas. She and Kenny Rogers were doing concerts
Uh,
together
uh,
and I go backstage at the reunion arena and meet them and spend about an hour with them. And we had a dinner together, and they were amazing. I just adore her. She's awesome.
that's amazing.
Awesome.
I love
She's
her.
worthy of your study and of your, of your thesis.
We will always love her. Nobody's got
Really.
bad to say about Dolly, even though we're talking about a rock movie, a rock horror film. We got to segue in Dolly Parton somehow. She's
Two things that James always has to do: little whorehouse in Texas and Grease 2. Always get a mention. It doesn't matter what it is. We could be talking about, transit.
Howard.
I mean, yeah.
Well, they're classics. They're
Yeah.
classics. And Dolly recently
I
on the football game on the halftime show, she was awesome. She was awesome.
She
She's
can't
awesome.
not be awesome. She's intrinsically awesome.
Yeah,
I
she's
can't believe
intrinsically awesome.
I did that.
Yeah. Listen, 77 years old. We should all be so lucky to be even still walking.
Mm-hmm.
She's timeless. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I had to mention that.
And
But thank you.
if you need that leopard thong shadow boxed, hit me up.
Yeah, it's just a cod piece. There's no back. It's just literally
Okay.
it was sewn on and just the front. Yeah.
Even easier. Even easier.
What did
Yeah.
you putting that on, performing in front of teenagers? What was going through your mind?
They weren't
Listen,
teenagers.
yeah, they were definitely teenagers. I just I went for it.
That's
It
what you
just
do.
helped me get in the mindset. And yeah, where that's what the actors for, right? Actors are, it's the idea to get it to get a chance to be somebody else on a Thursday. All of a sudden you get to step into something that has so little to do with your history and what your
Yep.
wheelhouse is. And you get to stretch out and become Howard the Duck or become Damien the heavy metal rock stars. I loved it. I loved it. I loved every second of it.
Well, we love it too. And we thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for your kindness and thanks for not making me feel like too old of a guy.
All good, man.
See you
We got
later.
you.
I'm trying to take care of myself in case we ever do make the sequel.
Well, you look identical. I mean, you must have a painting in the attic or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Made a
Yeah,
deal
really,
with
my older son looks a lot like it because he's 27 now, and I guess I was about 27 when we started shooting. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So he looks a lot like I did then. Yeah,
Can he
yeah.
sing? Can he
Oh
sing?
yeah, no, he's an amazing singer. Yeah, he's the one who's playing Elvis, who's been
Oh,
playing Elvis.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
But he can
well,
sing, he
maybe
went to college for theater, and yeah, no, he sings like a dream. Yeah.
Awesome.
well, maybe there's an idea, there with the whole Black Roses, Damien. There's the whole,
Black Rose's bloodline.
Yeah,
I
there you go. Son of Damien.
Son of Damien.
like the Omen.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. I love it. I love
That's amazing.
All right.
All
I'm
right.
off to the video store. So
it.
See you
Pleasure to
later.
meet you. And please stay in touch. And
We
anytime
will.
I can, it would be my honor. Thanks so much for having me.
thank
Bye-bye.
you, sir.
Thanks, James.